My name is Ashley, and this is my war story. Mystic, I remember being really bright, and I remember always being happy. I remember having a lot of talents. It wasn't until I was in like 5th grade that one of my best friends shot himself in the head after getting off the phone with me. And I spent a really long time trying to figure out why that happened. Nothing was ever the same after that. I started feeling depression come on more and more all the time, and I started struggling like really bad in school in about 7th grade and started becoming really rebellious. I met like some older friends who were like older than me, and I started hanging out with them, and they introduced me to like tripping on DXM. That went on for a really long time. I had my daughter when I was 18. And after I had her, like she was like the light of my life. Like I was so in love with her. Her dad got on heroin really bad, and it kind of just like broke everything up, and nothing was really the same after that. It took everything from me and my daughter as far as like taking her dad away. I had like several suicide attempts as a teenager and like early in my 20s. I had a really bad problem with like self-mutilation and like cutting myself, and I just remember wanting to die all the time. But I remember waking up one day and just being like, I need a stronger drug. I need something that is just gonna take me away from the meaninglessness that is my life. So I remember waking up and I was like, I'm gonna try heroin. I lost custody of my daughter. I had been banned from my house. My parents wanted nothing to do with me. I had tried going to rehab several times, and every single time I would go, I still had this like desire, like this hunger for more dope, and I never could stop wanting it. I started dating this guy, and who I met, who was homeless, and as soon as I met him, I was pretty much on the streets with him, living under a bridge, and living in hotels, living in our car. I ended up going to jail, going to the penal farm in 2017. And while I was there, I started kind of feeling like I was myself again and starting to remember who I was. And my dad and my mom started kind of supporting me again. And then I had no intentions on using heroin when I got out. And I got out, and then about 3 days later, I relapsed. And well, I started using meth for the first time. And once I started using meth, it was like, I first I used it to try to not use heroin, and then it just turned into meth and heroin both being my drug of choice at the same time. So, let's see, I'm trying to go through it quickly.
You can take a breath.
Okay,
You're
let's see.
Great.
We're just using this for editing, right? Okay.
Yep.
So,
Let's see. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, we can match that.
All right. So after I started using meth, things got a lot worse. I started escorting and just got really bad into my criminal activity. Just got like out of control. I didn't have a care in the world. I was like extremely rebellious. I just didn't care about anything, and I didn't feel like anybody could stop me from doing whatever I wanted. I ended up getting raped in 2019, and later on found out that I was pregnant from the rape. And I remember
You can say it, 'cause we can,
okay.
Yep.
We'll just reword
Just
it.
speak freely. No, it's fine. You can just speak. And trust me, I've heard it all.
Okay.
Every bit of it. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's nothing you can say that would not be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I got pregnant from the rape, and my boyfriend at the time became like really abusive, and pretty much like blamed me for all of it, and just turned into like a completely different person. And I was like completely alone on the streets, pregnant with this baby that I didn't want to have, from a situation that no one wants to have have anything to remember that, you know. And so I kept using, and I used until I was like 7.5 months. And I was finally arrested and went back to jail and was put on methadone while I was in jail. Let's see. I was so careless and like didn't care about anything. I was just so like just wild that I ended up actually beating up some officers and escaping from jail east. Yeah. Yeah, while I was pregnant.
Jesus Christ.
So I ended up somehow I spent 23 days in 23-1, which is, what do you call it? Solitary. The hole, yeah. And while I was in there, I had nothing at all. I didn't have commissary, I didn't have books, I didn't have paper, nothing, but there was a Bible. And I remember after like 60 days of being in there just completely like losing my mind, I finally decided to pick it up and read it. And as soon as I opened it, I remember seeing the word jasper. That it was described in Revelation of what one of the things that, what God looked like. Okay, well, whatever. So anyways, I remember seeing that word and something just kind of hit me, and it was like, it made me feel like my baby wasn't my rapist baby, but he was my baby. And that he was meant to come into my life, and that he was meant to take me away from everything that I had been putting myself through. And so like right then I made the decision that I wanted to be good, and I wanted to be a good mom, and I wanted to be closer to God, because I knew that there was something at this point, but I just didn't believe like in Jesus at that point. And so anyways, I ended up going to a treatment center for pregnant women, and I was there for a couple of months, and I ended up running from there. And then my mom ended up taking custody of my son and or fostering him through DCS. And then I stayed there for a couple months, and then I ended up running again and got back with the same guy and got back in my addiction. Yeah. And then I stayed out there like that for like several years, or a couple of years, until I finally, the year right before coming to Warriors, I was arrested again like 4 times. And every time I go to jail, I kept thinking, you know, with this last time I got arrested, I knew it was my last chance. I knew that I was going to get sentenced for the charge that I have had since 2015. And because I kept violating probation on it. And I knew that something had to change, and I knew that I wanted to be sober, and I knew that I couldn't continue doing what I had done before, because I knew I was going to end up dead. And the last, like right before I went, I'd overdosed 5 times in 1 week, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And okay, so while I was there in jail, like I was there for like 5 months, and while I was there, I got really comfortable being there. I felt like for the first time, I wasn't in bondage anymore. I felt like I was finally free, even though I was in a place that I'd always been terrified of going to, a place that no one really would consider themselves free in. And I started reading my Bible, and I started really understanding it. And for the first time, I gave my life to Jesus. And I knew that I wanted to learn more about the Bible, and I wanted to learn more about my purpose. And I knew that I had been through all these things, but I always somehow got through all of them, and I knew there was a reason for that. So anyways, so while I was in jail, I had this vision of this place that wasn't like a normal rehab. It was like a place that repairs you spiritually, and it is more focused on your relationship with God. And I didn't know what this place was or where it was, but I knew that it was what was going to change my life, and I knew it was where I was going to go. Even though it looked like I was about to be sentenced, I just had this feeling that this place, whatever it was, I was going to find it. So I started looking like all over in like East Tennessee and everywhere, looking for this place that matched up with this vision that I saw, and I had a lot of difficulty finding it. And eventually, that's how I ended up at Warriors.
No.
That's not exactly how that happened. I actually got out of jail, and then somebody, I went to a rehab. I ran from that, and then this girl that I had met in jail told me about Warriors. And so I finally went, and I remember in my vision seeing this black dog, and I don't know why. I just remember seeing this black dog. And so when I went to Warriors, I remember one of the first things I saw when I pulled in the driveway was the black dog, BB.
Yeah, BB.
Yeah, she was running up the driveway. And then more and more each day, I would realize that there were so many things about this program that matched up perfectly with the vision that I had when I was in jail. And I knew that this was the place that was meant to save my life. It was where God was calling me to. And while I was there, my son ended up getting taken out of my mom's custody and put with a foster family. And I remember in the past, if something like this would have happened, it would have been my absolute perfect excuse to give up on everything and just go back to my old life. But I remember talking to Noelle, and she told me to just wait and see what God does. And so for the first time in my life, I actually took her advice. And it was shortly after that, I started like seeing anchors like everywhere. Like they would just appear out of nowhere, and random things on random pictures, on just wherever I looked. I would open up a book and there would be an anchor. And I felt like, you know, God was trying to tell me something with that. I mean, it was unreasonable amount of times I would see it during a day. And I felt like God was trying to tell me something. And so I asked one of the ladies at the center, like, what do anchors mean? Do they have any biblical meaning or whatever? And she was like, have you asked God? Have you prayed about it? And I was like, well, no, I haven't actually just asked. So that morning I went and got on my knees at the altar and I prayed and I just asked God, like, what does this mean? And as soon as I stood up, our A&D director came up to me with a stack full of papers, and she handed it to me and just walked away. And when I looked down at it, it was every definition. It was the definition. It was all the any Bible verse that was on anchors. It was the what's it called? It was like all the everything that anchor means, all the synonyms. It was just everything that explained what anchors mean spiritually to Christianity. And it was just crazy. And I felt like God had like immediately just sent me this like email, like, hey, you asked, so here's your answer. And I felt, and some of the words that it said in there were steadfast, safety, and it was basically just explaining to me to hold on, to wait, like to not give up, that he was holding me down, that he was my anchor, and that I had to be the anchor to my family as well. And so as soon as that happened, I pretty much, oh crap, I missed a part.
It's okay.
We can fix it?
What'd you miss?
Okay, so right before this happened, like the day that he got taken out of my mom's custody, I went on a trip, and while I was on the trip, I relapsed, and I got caught. And so right there in the mountains, I finally just like, I just started crying and I started praying, and I just begged God to change me and make me good, to take the desire for wanting to use anything away from me. And I just didn't understand why I kept wanting to mess everything good up in my life just to be high or to feel different. And so that happened, and then that day is the same day he got taken out of my mom's custody. And so with the anchor thing and all that, it just, something happened that day. It made me realize that I had to step up into my responsibilities of being a mom and work really hard to get my kids back. And nothing's been the same since. And I started actually having integrity, and I started actually, you know, having discernment and choosing the right thing and doing good things, and the desire went away completely. And within a couple of months, I was teaching classes at the center. Before I even graduated, I was teaching classes, and I kept learning more and more about God and about His Word and His promises. And everything after that just started to fall together. And now I'm still teaching classes, and all kinds of new things just keep happening in my life. My family's been completely restored. My mental health has been restored. I have no symptoms to any of the things I had before. I don't take medication anymore. I actually feel like I have a relationship with God now. I feel like He's completely changed me and made me a completely new creation. And I'm this close to getting my son back. And for the first time in my life, I have my own house, and I just have my own things, and not just physical things, but spiritual things. And yeah. So, is that good? Is it good enough? Okay. We'll use that. Good enough.